Welcome to the Other 165. On this show, we want to talk about what to do when life happens, when things knock you down and discourage you throughout your week. Join us as we discuss how to stay encouraged and develop true relationships of love and discipleship. We hope you enjoy this week's episode. Alrighty, welcome back. Welcome back to another episode of the Other 165. I am your host, as always, Aaron, and with me is my trusty co-host, Joel. How you doing, Joel?
Hey, great.
All right. So, what we want to talk about today, and we're not real sure how many episodes this, let's call it a series, will be. At least two. But it's going to be sort of an encompassing topic, and we are going to pick through the subtopics. And the overall thing that we're really wanting to talk about is basically the next step. You know, we've talked about loving God, loving people, and all of that good stuff. So what about the practicality of living our daily lives? And that's kind of honestly where this whole podcast came from. It's the conversations that me and Joel have had just to kind of bring this whole thing together anyway. And this was obviously a topic that we're really passionate about. And to sum it all up in one sentence, it is basically we want to try and glorify God in all things and everything we do, bringing it back to that. Because really, if you're doing that, like if you're really truly examining yourself and knowing that every move that you make is in service or in honor of Jesus, then I mean, you can't really find much wrong with that.
No,
Obviously.
not at all.
Obviously, it's not a completely perfect system because we are imperfect. But honestly, it's what we are striving for. So to jump right in, I have a verse that we're going to start with, and it is 2 Corinthians 5:17. Therefore, if anyone is in Christ, he is a new creation. The old has passed away. Behold, the new has come. So we both can attest to this, that like that's not just a feel good, sound nice sentence. You know what I'm saying? Like that's real. That's a real thing. You know what I mean? And I'm not talking like you go to church and get your weekly spiritual experience and you walk out and you're like, I feel a little bit better. But kind of like we were talking on the last episode, when you fully start to surrender, when you fully start to give over your life, your will to the will of God, like you don't want the same things that you did before. You're not the same person that you were before, and that is on purpose. And it's not to say that it's easy, but
No,
it's the most rewarding thing that I have ever experienced.
Yeah, not like it, and especially like for me, it's always been one of those things of understanding and being realistic in the sense of your past, in the sense of understanding that all of us have made mistakes. All of us basically, when we came to Christ, we knew for a fact that we needed help, and the one person that can help us in all things is Him. And it's a new thing, you could say, in the sense of like when we're a new creation, in the sense of Him giving us a new life. And with that new life comes challenges and changes and things like that, because we cannot do the things we used to do in order for us to change completely. And that's where you can say the struggle does happen. I mean, with the topics we'll touch on, you'll hear different topics in the sense of that were certain things that can help you change in the sense of basically becoming that new person, that you'll have to give up certain things. And it was a struggle for me. It was like in my teens, especially, it was certain things that I still wanted to hold on to.
Yeah, and I know I have experienced this. I think it's probably true of anyone. I feel like especially people who were raised in church. I'm sure you've experienced this, but it's almost like you know the pastor or whoever will preach like, if you just come up to this altar, you're gonna change right now. Like God can change you right now, and and that's absolutely true. I mean, I'm not questioning the sovereignty of God right now. I would never do that. But I feel like sometimes with something like that is I know a lot in my life that um the changes that have come, the change is not only the the powerful thing that's happening, it's also the process of going through the change. You know what I mean? Like there's a step by step thing that, the end game is the change, but also you're learning every step of the way of all of these different stages of development.
Yeah,
So there are times when, it's the change that's going to happen in you is going to be a process. It's going to be a grind sometimes
yeah,
because it's a lot of it can take a lot of effort. But anyway,
no,
I say all that to say that sometimes I would get really frustrated because you know I would even go up to the altar and have my spiritual experience and feel great, but then you walk out the door and then you're back in life. You know what I mean? And you're like,
mhm,
wait, I I, I s- I- I still want to do that thing that I was doing before, and I know I shouldn't. You know what I mean? And it can be, and it's like instant failure. You know
yeah,
what I mean? Like, well, I must have not. I must have did something wrong up at the altar. I must have said something wrong. I must have. I didn't have my hands raised high enough because God didn't change me.
yeah,
Well, at the same time, He might want to bring you through the entire process, not
mhm,
just you're healed, you're different. Like
yeah.
yes, maybe along the way, little by little, but a lot of times there's a process involved. So,
No,
and
and
it,
I
go ahead. Go
yeah,
ahead.
I'm sorry. No, and I agree with you. It's one of those things that me, um, also trusting him through the process
Yeah.
is the biggest process. Is because, like you said, you'll have your spiritual experience when you get prayed for, but that's the first step. But just trusting him through that process, and
Yes,
um,
sir.
it's amazing because there'll be different times and understanding that daily or something like that there'll be mistakes. Acknowledging and confessing those mistakes are basically some of the biggest points in your life in the sense of showing growth. Because if you can't accept and acknowledge those basic steps, then it's basically going to natural growth.
Right. Yeah. And the one thing that I've started to learn too is to, I mean, you don't want to be nonchalant about it, like, oh, screwed up again. He'll forgive me. All right. But, to not get too down about it, to like, ah, you know, happened again, or I'm thinking that way again, but
Yeah.
God forgive me, help me, and start over. Just keep going, just keep at it.
No, which is a good point because, like, basically, it's something like that, understanding and like not being nonchalant about your mistake, but like you said, like just going through it in a different way.
Right. And that'll bring us nicely to another verse that we want to talk about, because it is a perfect representation of what we're talking about and how a daily, minutely strive to just constantly just keep getting better, just keep working at it, just keep trying to get closer to God. And it comes from Romans 12:2. And it says, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect."
Hmm.
So, a couple of things. I love this verse, and I want to talk about a couple of different things. We talk a lot about in and out of church, you know what I mean, and how it's easy in church. But there's never going to be a time where you're not going to have to go back into the world. You know what I mean? You're still going to have to go to your job. You're going to have to, raise your kids, go home and struggle through things that test your faith. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like you're not always going to be in the most calming environment. So it's just about learning how to be in those situations that you've always been in, but having a different attitude and looking at it through a different lens. And Paul talks about being transformed by the renewal of your mind.
Changing your mind is the main part, because
I agree.
I remember, how you say, like when my father would take us to go do certain, like say, food ministries or whatever, something like that. As a young person, I would be like, here we go again. 2 hours of my life that I'm, can't go play. You know what I'm saying? And then
Right.
as I started getting closer to Christ and started, being transformed, I didn't look at it as something like that anymore. I more looked at it as a lesson that I was going to be able to be learned. And a lot of times I thought I was going there to be a blessing, when I didn't realize, like, sometimes I was like, there were sometimes I would go there and I would learn a lesson just due to the fact of people's experiences and all that other stuff. But if I didn't go with an open mind, if I just went there like, hey, here's your stuff, have a good day, I would lose so much. And there's a lot of times, even at work, if I go there sometimes and I know for a fact, like I'm thinking like, man, it's gonna be another day, we're busy, I just gotta da da da. You know what I'm saying? I'm gonna miss
Right.
something. But when I change my thought in a sense of being like, man, it's a busy day, which is good because that guarantees I get to work. And we're going to get through this because we're going to show that we're well qualified to do this job, that we all wind up having a better day out of that whole thing, and just trusting God through that whole thing.
Yeah, and I mean that's really what these next couple of episodes are all going to be about, is just allowing the renewal of your mind. Because if if you're gonna if you're gonna do this, if you're gonna strive to live for God, but you're not going to allow Him to change the way you see the world, then it's it's not really going
So,
to do you a lot of good. You know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the beauty of it, is that you don't have to be the same person that you were.
no,
you
true.
know and the bad news that um out of that verse that we read, though, is it doesn't say by living an easy life, or by you know sitting back and eating Cheetos while you watch football.
No, this is some
It says
garbage.
it says that by testing you may discern what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect. So that means it's not always going to be easy. It's not always going to be a picnic. And I mean, this is actually pretty applicable to my scenario, to my situation in the past couple of weeks. I've been kind of struggling a bit, and I actually I talked a little bit with the pastor of this church I was going to, and I was texting him back and forth, and I was I was sharing with him a couple of the things that I've been struggling with lately, and he was the one who told me that um, you know, it's not always the output of what you're doing. Sometimes it's the process. And that's kind of what put into perspective that it's not always going to be just, God, I need this. There you go. Have fun. A lot of times there is a process involved so that we can learn along the way and be better for it when he finally does on his time give us what we need.
Yeah.
But yeah, it takes effort, it takes um, constant attention to move toward that, which can be a struggle in and of itself, but it's very rewarding.
Yeah, because I mean, you think about with the test, I always think about with the test in school, it's basically the test and make sure you understand the material that was presented before you. When we get a test in life, it's basically just to make sure we understand that God is there. Are we going to trust Him? And how are we going to seek Him in the sense of trusting Him even more to get through this test? And like you said, with that process, sometimes it takes a couple of days. It's not a snap of the finger in the sense of getting things through and being done with. But as we go through it, are we going to seek Him more or are we going to seek Him less? And if we seek Him less, then it means that basically that process may take longer. We seek Him more, basically that process, you know what I'm saying, is going to be a lot easier because we're not in it alone. So because like I know with me, if I pull away and I stop seeking Him in whatever I'm doing, then it makes everything a lot harder. And I can feel alone, not because He left me, but because I left Him.
Right. And it's funny sometimes that when you realize that you have pulled away from him, you kind of just like, well, duh. It's like, God, I don't feel close to you. God, I haven't heard from you. God, what, I don't know what to do. And then you really start to think like, well, I haven't prayed in 5 days, and I haven't opened my Bible in 5 days, and you know what I mean? Just kind of like you really start to
Examine.
notice stuff like that. You start to notice that maybe it's not him that's being, distant. It's me. I'm the one who's off doing my own thing, but still expecting him to just, you know, kind of like a vending machine, like, well, I'm ready for this, so let me punch this in. What, what, why isn't it? Maybe it's stuck on the hook. Let me shake it a bit so it falls. It's not really like that.
I think that's where it's beautiful in the sense of understanding or something like that. If you're there with Him, you're there with Him through all things. And like you said, like it's not a routine in the sense of like, oh, I have to read for this long, I have to pray for this long. No, honestly, it's something. Sometimes you need to turn your clock off and just be in the experience and just read and just pray and then just trust.
So we're gonna move into our actual um, discussion for this episode, and um, it's going to be the first part of glorifying God in all things. But first, we're going to talk about what does that mean to glorify Him. And I looked up a couple of definitions to kind of simplify it, and the thing that I like, the definition that I would use would be to honor Him. So that would be if you take nothing else away from any of these episodes, take away the fact that if you can just get to a point in your life where you have the presence of mind to ask yourself in literally everything you do, is this in some way bringing honor to God? Like, you know what I thought of when I was writing this?
Nah.
I was thinking of those "What would Jesus do" bracelets. when
Which,
when those were so huge.
oh my goodness,
Um,
dude.
but of course that was, if you're actually going to make that a part of your life, and for every decision you make you think what would Jesus do, then that, yeah, I mean, it's kind of similar to what I'm saying, but I just thought of that and it made me laugh. But that would be how I would say we could start to make better decisions. Is
Yeah.
this bringing honor to God? And I have another verse that I want to read. It is Colossians 3:17, and it says, "Whatever you do in word or in deed, do all in the name of the Lord Jesus, giving thanks through him to God the Father." So it doesn't say, you know, just the things that you do on Sunday, or, the things that are easy, or the things that, it says all things. So in everything you do and every decision you make and everything, you should ask, am I doing this in the name of Jesus or in the name of Aaron?
No. Which is true. And I think like giving him full credit, full control of everything makes it a lot easier. Because I mean, that's honestly where a lot of people fall in a sense of their pride because they want to say me, me, me. I've done this, I've done that, and when we're giving God the glory and we're knowing for a fact that that's all Him and we're doing it all for Him, then there's nothing, no better feeling at the end of the day.
Amen. Where we want to start with glorify God in all things is relationships. How do we glorify God in our relationships? And I know there's going to be a little bit of overlap of our episode with love your neighbor, because glorifying God in our relationships is largely just loving people, but I definitely think it was important enough to add to that anyway. So we're going to talk about how do we glorify God in our relationships. So what's been so cool about the process of going through these episodes and kind of, I do research and put together my notes for these episodes. Um, Something that's been so cool, and it happened for this episode too, where my regular Bible reading that I just do for my own devotion lines up with the topic that we're talking about. Like I think it was yesterday and today was Colossians, and Colossians is very much so just how to treat people. And so it's been very cool to just kind of like, oh, how topical. And the first thing we want to talk about is how do we glorify God in our relationships is controlling or being mindful, as my wife would say, of what we say and how we say it.
No, honestly, I think it's true though. It's something that somebody may think of, and I mean, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. But honestly, the dumb part about that is something like that. Words do hurt.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and so it's one of those schoolyard things that were said that, you know what I'm saying, that we're supposed to be like, oh, those words don't hurt me and da da da. That's probably part of the reason why some relationships struggle, due to the fact, if I say certain things to my wife, and we always joke about it, like in the sense of marriage, uh, I don't never lie. Like I never lie to my wife. Like I've lied to her before. I'm not saying I've never lied to her, but I'm human. Um, that dress look good on you? Oh yeah. No, I'm playing.
Whoa.
No, but I'm saying like in the sense of uh, many different things that we do in the sense of our words and our relationship, controlling our mouth, which is, I'll tell you, is like the biggest struggle for me, um, in the sense of not being flip, as some people say.
Hmm. Well, and I mean, it's definitely an important part of, you know, of this topic. But even if you were to say, let's just say, for example, you're like, well, what I said didn't hurt them. Like, okay, well, let's go back to what our original um, point was, is asking yourself, is what you're saying in honor of Jesus? Does it bring
Yeah,
honor to Jesus? So that might um, kind of bring in a whole new category of how we talk, is not just necessarily worried about, like, because then you can always get like, oh, well, that person's just overly sensitive. That's why it hurt them, because it's them. They're too sensitive. But really, if you start to really ask yourself, like, is what I just said in honor, or to honor, to bring honor to Jesus?
no, amen. And I think like it's crazy to think about it. A couple of my buddies, that we've known each other since like middle school. Um, we basically have certain topics that we tell each other that we're not allowed to touch on when we all get together, and it's not because we can't talk about everything, but we know they're at times can be touchy subjects that we want to make sure that nothing is ever going to be not glorifying God. And it's crazy because like you can think of, like, say for instance, if it's if we know for a fact a friend likes a certain team and they're out of the playoffs, we'll text each other and be like, hey, we know this is a sensitive subject for them, so let's stay away from this. I mean, when it's just regular time getting together, we just do whatever. But when it's like, hey, we're getting together to sort of like sharpen each other or whatever, that's when we're like, hey, these are topics that we want to stay away from, but at the same time, and that's where it's being wise, because we want to make sure that it's glorifying God, especially when we're like, hey, because every time you go out and you're doing whatever you're doing it to glorify God.
Dude, that is not how I grew up with my friends. Like, that's one of the hardest things to get over with. Just kind of in that relationship with your friends. You know what I'm saying? Like, we grew up, like, we make fun of each other for fun. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not gonna be like, it was something really hard for me to break, because, like, for your example, like, oh man, your team's out of the playoffs. Let's not bring it up. That'd be the first thing I brought up. Like, yo, your team is
No,
out, son.
yeah,
How do you
yeah,
like
no, no,
that?
no. That's why I was saying like if it's just a general hangout, it's all open. But when we're like, hey, we're getting together for like sometimes we'll just get together for breakfast or whatever and just like have like a devotion day. We'll usually be like, hey, the meaning for this is basically we're getting together for like a Bible study or something like that. So let's sort of deter from our usual
Well, right,
antics.
yeah, but what I'm saying is that it um being like that with my friends made me like that just in general, and it was hard to get away from that. Like, um to learn how to speak in a fashion that builds people up. I was not
Mhm.
used to that. Like, we
Yeah.
don't build each other up. What are you trying to say something nice to me? What's wrong with you? Like, tell me I'm an idiot and let's move on with our lives. Like, that's
Oh,
that's how I grew up with my friends. And obviously, I'm not saying you can't joke around with people. Like, you can't, because there's people that probably forever we will just make fun of each other and poke fun at each other because that's what we enjoy to do. But to first of all let that go too far and to let it bleed into how you treat others is a whole different ball game. And it's
Oh yeah.
if that just becomes your habit, then it's very hard to control and it could be damaging to other relationships.
No, that's
And
true.
speaking of Colossians, I was reading this morning, and in it Paul talks about how we need to put aside anger, wrath, malice, slander, and abusive language. So that would be kind of another thing to watch. Like, what does abusive language mean to you? And um, so I know what.
No, because I'm thinking like in my head, it's like one of those to where like people will say, "Well, this is an abusive language because it doesn't offend me," and that
Right.
technically shouldn't be where you say what's acceptable. I always tell like for me, I would say like if you feel you can't say it in a job interview or at church uh, or to somebody you basically like a mentor that you know for a fact you respect everything about them, then why would you think you should say it to somebody else? They're not beneath those people.
Amen. Amen. How about would you say it in prayer?
Oh, it's a
Like,
perfect one.
would you say it to God if you were praying? I
I was,
guarantee that'll bring up some questions in your
yeah.
vocabulary.
No, it's true, but I'm still I'm thinking of like certain people like in the middle of their prayer getting mad. You've got to be kidding me! I want to
Oh
tell you
man.
something, but I can't use this word.
Right.
But no, it's perfect because if you think about it, in the sense of how we're watching our words, and as
Yeah.
Paul said, Paul, amazing, amazing. Um, it's just one of those things in the sense of as we control, and that's the part. Like for me, that's one of my biggest things that I told myself. Like I said, for for this year and going on, that I want to control my tongue. In the beginning, it was basically due to the fact that I just didn't really care. And now you can say, and I mean, I thought I cared, but I didn't. And now more you can say like, well, honestly, like the biggest thing that's really made me watch what I say is my 2 year old Miles. If I say something, apparently we gave birth to a parrot because everything because like I think the one day I said what up dog and he goes up to his little brother and was like what up dog baby and and that's when I was like oh I have to watch because I don't want him going out there if he's going to go out there and represent me I want him to go out there representing me in Christ you know what I'm saying not representing me in flesh.
So I know that you're saying this is something you would like to change, but I still think one of the most amazing things is when Miles said, "Oh shoot." That made me laugh so hard. But
and
I
it,
understand what you're saying.
No, but like, and I think like it's beautiful in the sense of how we change certain things, and I mean, and I think that's where, like you said, the pastor said the process, and trusting him in the process in the sense of understanding that there are things that are going to have to change, little by little, in order for us to become the person that God designed us to be, and I think of it in the sense of you think of an Olympian, uh, Olympic athletes when they um, basically when they want to be an Olympian, they basically have to give up time um, with friends and family because they're putting 100% into whatever say running, and then they have to change diets. Then they have to change sleeping habits. There's so much in order to be the best that they want to be. In the sense of our Christian life, we're going to have to give up certain times in the sense of to basically be able to give some reading time, some prayer time, and you could say giving up you could say the old talk is not going to be easy, but it's going to be the best thing in a sense of, like you said, in our prayer, we're not going to sit there and just be like, hey, blah, blah, blah. But I think also in a sense of, um, my brother was preaching the one day, and in the sense of where we use our words, um, and he said something where a lot of times our words um, get us in trouble because we're trying to fix our problems with our words when our words were the cause of the problem. And
Mm.
um, just like when Jesus was tempted, um, he didn't use his words, he used God's words in the sense of speaking to the devils. And how amazing that was in the sense of thinking, in the sense of him using his father's words. It's also in a sense of us using Christ's words in the sense of fixing our problems.
The other thing that Paul talks about in Colossians is slander. Um, so abusive language and slander, kind of talking behind other people's backs, which is a very divisive thing, and kind of, I don't know, saying something about someone that you wouldn't say to their face is, I believe, abusive language. I mean, we're all guilty of it. It's kind of, you know, a very humanist thing to do, but definitely something to try and correct.
Yeah. Which in some ways, um, you can say, I can understand if you're reaching out to a brother and you're like, hey, these are certain things, somebody you trust that you know for a fact is not going to take it and then start spreading it. You know what I'm saying?
Hmm.
But if you're going to your brother, your sister, and you're just like, hey, these are certain things that I want to talk about with the person. I just want to get your opinion, da da da. I could see that. But if you're basically doing it to bash and to bring down and bring glory to yourself, then basically, if something like that, you're fake.
Right. And I mean, it all comes back to intention, and is what you're saying, what you're doing, bringing honor to God. And I didn't want to bring this up, and I was wondering if I would get a text from you after I sent you this outline. But um, there's just been so much division. I'm not going to get I'm not going to get political, and I'm not going to get specific. But what I am going to say is that it really pains me to see on social media all of the hatred and all of the divisiveness simply over, you know, obviously lately it's been political views. But there is one thing that I cannot stand, is using God as a platform to call someone stupid. Like, that doesn't make any
No, it
sense.
doesn't.
Like, posting God hates fill in the blank. Wrong. Incorrect.
Oh,
Stop
yeah.
doing it. That
Yeah.
is something that is just, I can't get too far into it because we could probably do a whole episode of that, but it drives me insane. And you know, it's just the time that we live in, you know, that you don't have to say things to people's face anymore. And it's a lot harder I guarantee some of the people that are posting this stuff on social media would never say it to this person's face, ever.
No.
But it just makes it that much easier that you can sit behind your keyboard. But, you know, that's a whole different that's a whole different animal than hiding behind God and spreading hatred with it. That drives me crazy. If you are typing the sentence or reposting the sentence that has to do with God hates this certain people because they believe this way, it's wrong. You're wrong. God doesn't hate
Yeah.
anyone. He loves everyone. Like, ugh.
No, you're right. No, and it's one of those in a sense to where people want to sometimes bring Christ into it in a sense of like, oh, he told me this. No, Dippy. And that's where something like that, you're 100% wrong. Because in that situation, I stand with you in that because honestly, part of the podcast was basically just to have regular relationship conversations that we have on a daily, and it's very um, draining when you have to. And I mean, I've talked to Aaron about this multiple times, and my wife, that I was like so tempted just to delete one of my um, delete my Facebook, because I just like got sick. It seemed so much negative. I would almost say it would be 75% negative and then 25% positive. And honestly, it would be a lot of my sisters and brothers that basically proclaim to be Christians, that instead of them showing the love of God and doing different things in the sense of like being that light in this test, you know what I'm saying, that we go through with COVID, which is a test in the sense of a change, and but it's still one of those things in the sense that we can glorify God in it. Because like, I mean, just thinking about it, not going, yeah, there's COVID and there's restrictions that we can not do, but technically, am I still? I'm still healthy. I still have a job. I'm still able to get food at when I need it.
Amen.
You know what I'm saying? And I'm still able to spend time with my loved ones. So technically, the only thing that they've restricted me on is basically telling me that I can't go certain places for my safety. And I appreciate them trying to do what's best for my family to keep us safe, because we all, I mean, I want to see Aaron's pretty face. You know what I'm saying? So I want to make sure to be safe out of it. But no, like you said, it's very sad when people use God in the sense of just evil.
Yeah. Amen. So after that cheery subject, we're going to move on something a little cheerier. And we're going to talk about
I'm sorry, I was picturing you when you
no,
said cheery with your pirate pom poms. Go ahead.
what?
I don't know. It just made me think of
Stop it.
you were a lifter. Anyways,
Didn't happen. You're spreading slander right now. I rebuke you.
Wow, felt that one.
So we've talked a lot about what not to do. I'm going to talk a little bit about what to do. And again, we covered a little bit of this in Love Your Neighbor, in the Love Your Neighbor episode, but can't really be overstated to serve others rather than wanting to be served, you know. And like I know I've caught myself doing this before, where I think I'm going to do something for someone, but then also like kind of not like, what am I going to get out of it? But you definitely, as a human, you have a tendency to say, well, you know, what am I going to get out of it? Type of thing. And, you know, just to do things for others, even if you get nothing personally out of it. And I'm going to bring up the example of me and another friend at work are starting an online Bible study. And, you know, it started from a conversation that he had with me. And I basically told him, like, you know, we can start this Bible study. And the human, my human side, after we had this conversation, because it was really exciting, like, yeah, man, this would be great. I'm thinking like, man, it's gonna take up my time. You know, I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to do that. But one thing that I've learned out of doing this podcast is, even if, and I know this is kind of going against what I just said, because the reward totally outweighs the work that I have to put into it. So I already know that doing this Bible study, doing this gathering, trying to help people is going to be very rewarding to me, but that shouldn't be my sole motivation. Like, all right, I'm going to do this so I can feel good. so it really came from the conversation that I had with my coworker, and him just saying that, I want to do better. I want to do better, but I don't know how. And I told him, I was like, I don't know if I can help. Like I know I can share with you what I've learned, but honestly, to say that, we're gonna get 2, 3, 5, 15 people together and go through a Bible reading, or, a discussion topic or whatever, and to get that many points of view, to have that iron sharpening iron, to have people together trying to move towards their goal of being in relationship with God and getting closer in relationship with God. I mean, that's that's being the church outside of the church. You know what I'm saying? Like that's something that anyone can do. Like I'm not a Bible scholar. Like I read the Bible, but I'm not. I didn't go to seminary. I don't know ancient Greek. I can't do all of those things. But at the same time, to supplement what you're already doing with something like that, to where just it doesn't have to be, all right, we read 30 chapters this week. Read one chapter. I mean, read whatever, and then
Yeah.
just get together and talk about it, because you never know what someone is going to find, or what it's going to say to them. It's going to say something maybe different than what it's saying to you, and getting those different points of view is so powerful.
No, very true. And I think that's where it's literally or something like that, just encouraging the next person so that way you can, if you can't do something in the sense of growing each other or something like that, then growing yourself is just selfish. You want to sort of like spread knowledge, spread anything in the sense of Christ or whatever, so that way you can be with each other. Like they always say, never neglect the gathering of saints. You know what I'm saying? This is a perfect opportunity for those that are able to connect in a different way. All right.
So the last thing we want to talk about is something that is difficult but can be very important, especially for a new Christian, or really anyone who is trying to put effort into every part of your life being an honor to God. And it's to realize when it's maybe time to cut ties with a relationship, or at the very least pull back. And it's when a relationship you have is detrimental to your relationship with God.
Mhm.
And I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be like instantaneous, like, oh, well, this relationship isn't, isn't bringing honor to God or whatever. It doesn't mean you shouldn't try.
Yeah.
But there definitely does come a time where a relationship, if it is keeping you from growing, if it is keeping you from honoring your relationship with God, it could be time to pull back. And if it continues, then it might be the best course of action is to cut ties completely, and just
Yeah.
pray for that person and hope that, they can come back and you two can have a mutually beneficial relationship that allows you to grow in a relationship with God and each other.
Yeah. And I think like for me was when I had to realize like when was it time to start cutting ties. Now there you can say like there's a time where you can say like you try to have a conversation and you're like, hey, I can't go this way anymore. We can't do the things that we used to do. And that's where you'll know if they respect you in a sense of saying you're right, yeah, we need to be different, or if they laugh or just like, whatever. Because like the biggest thing I look at when I have brothers in the Lord is I look for an accountability partner, somebody that's gonna, somebody I can lean on, somebody that, what I'm saying, they know the ways of this world and they know how Christ is, so that way we can do things so much better.
Right. And I mean, it's also not to say like if you're cutting ties with this person, like what if it's someone at work? When you see them, are you gonna run as fast as you can away from them? You know what I mean? But
Look at it and be like,
yeah, I mean, it could be as simple as not allowing them to have such a loud voice in your life anymore. You know what I mean? Like it could be just questioning, like, man, because when you spend a lot of time with someone, you give them a voice into your life. You can take on like their personality traits. You know what I'm saying? Like you can become more like them instead of trying to be more like Christ. And it could be something just as simple as I'm going to work on my relationship with God, and I'm not going to allow this person to have this loud voice into my life that they once did. They're not going to have the influence that they once had on me. Next time, we're going to dive into glorifying God at work. And I know that's a personal favorite of mine. I'm pretty excited to talk about that one just because it's really easy to hate your job. And just allowing yourself to have your mind renewed and view going to work in a different way can make a life-changing difference. And I can attest to that. So we're going to talk about that. And whether it be in that episode or another episode, we're also going to talk about glorifying God and what we watch, what we listen to, and how we use our free time. So we'll be working real hard to get those ready for you. We thank you for joining us. Please remember to like, share, subscribe, and if you'd like to email us, we have an email. It's theother165hours@gmail.com. If you want to send us a personal message, it'll just be us looking at it. And join us next time as we study glorifying God in all things. And have a blessed day.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And we hope you continue to join us on our mission to not only live for God for 3 hours a week at church, but also for our other 165. Have a blessed day.